Namaste, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Sacred Space with me, your host, Preetha Lal, as we spend time reading the book Eternal Values for a Changing Society by the late Srimad Swami Ranganathananda ji. As you are aware, if you're following this podcast, Swami Ranganathananda was the 13th president of the Ramakrishna Matan Mission, but he was also so much more. He was a scholar par excellence, a spiritual ambassador, a philosopher, and a teacher. This multi-volume treatise that I have decided to read to you through this podcast is a testament to the breadth of his knowledge and the depth of his wisdom. Today we will continue where we left off and continue to read the Swami's thoughts on evolution, both organic and psychosocial, and also the evolution of knowledge into wisdom. Thank you for being here as we are reading Science and Religion, and this is part 3 of this brilliant work by Swami Ranganathananda. Let us begin. Evolution, organic versus psychosocial. In a lecture on the evolutionary vision delivered in 1959 at the closing session of the Chicago University Symposium on Evolution After Darwin, held to commemorate the centenary of the publication of Darwin's Origin of Species, the noted biologist, the late Sir Julian Huxley, gave a spiritual orientation to the evolutionary process. And the Swami quotes here from that lecture. Man's evolution is not biological but psychosocial. It operates by the mechanism of cultural tradition, which involves the cumulative self-reproduction and self-variation of mental activities and their products. Accordingly, major steps in the human phase of evolution are achieved by breakthroughs to new dominant patterns of mental organization of knowledge, ideas, and beliefs, ideological instead of physiological or biological organization. The Swami continues to quote, all dominant thought organizations are concerned with the ultimate, as well as with the immediate problems of existence. Or, I should say, rather, with the most ultimate problems that the thought of the time is capable of formulating or even envisaging. They are all concerned with giving some interpretation of man, of the world which he is to live in, and of his place and the role in that world. In other words, some comprehensive picture of human destiny and significance. Further, Huxley reveals the trend of evolution at the human stage towards quality when he says, it, or the evolutionary vision that he talks about, shows us mind enthroned above matter, quantity, and subordinate to quality. In his essay on emergence of Darwinism, Huxley sums up the goal of the evolutionary process at the human level of fulfillment. And the Swami quotes here, in the light of our present knowledge, man's most comprehensive aim is seen not as mere survival, not as numerical increase, not as increased complexity of organization or increased control over his environment, but as greater fulfillment, the fuller realization of more possibilities by the human species collectively and more of its component members individually. Unquote. And pleading for the development of a science of human possibilities, Huxley concludes thus, quote, once greater fulfillment is recognized as man's ultimate or dominant aim, we shall need a science of human possibilities to help guide the long course of psychosocial evolution that lies ahead. Unquote. The Swami continues again, psychosocial evolution. What is meant by this? From the living cell up to the human, biological evolution was motivated by organic satisfaction, numerical increase, and organic survival. But with the appearance of the human, these become, says modern biology, secondary and not primary. The primary motivation becomes fulfillment, and evolution itself becomes, at the stage of the human, conscious and deliberate and goal-oriented, unlike the blind processes at the pre-human stages. This revolutionary change is the result of the fully developed cerebral system in the human, in virtue of which the evolutionary process itself undergoes a revolutionary change. What was organic evolution becomes psychosocial evolution. Organic evolution has no primary significance in the case of the human. endowed by nature with a versatile cerebral organ, with the aid of which he can invent any organs he may need more efficiently and quickly than what nature can do for him through her slow and wasteful evolutionary processes. Accordingly, evolution has risen from its organic to the psychosocial level in the human being, says biology. In a self-centered person, as in all pre-human species, the psyche or mind or soul is limited and confined to the physical organism. In a moral or ethical person, it expands, goes beyond the limitations of his physical organism, and enters and is entered into by other psyches of the social milieu. This is the fruit of psychosocial evolution. What biology calls psychosocial evolution is what the essence of religion calls ethical awareness and social feelings, the byproduct of the early phases of spiritual growth of the human being. With the onset of this psychosocial evolution, people develop capacity to dig affections into each other as a matter of conscious choice, thus revealing a higher dimension of the human individuality than what is revealed by his physical individuality with its organic appetites and choices. All ethical theories presuppose a distinction between a lower self and a higher self in the human. And the liberation of the higher self is what the human achieves through psychosocial evolution or spiritual growth. It is renunciation of the lower self and manifestation of the higher self. The subject of the spiritual growth of the human, of evolution as psychosocial, is a pregnant theme to the human in the modern age. It points out to him the way to rescue himself from the tyranny of the sensate and the quantitative, as well as from the prevailing stagnation of worldliness, and helps him to continue his evolutionary march to qualitative richness and fulfillment, individually and collectively. The initial focus of self in the human is the ego, which appears on the evolutionary scene only with the appearance of the human. And even at the stage of the human being, it appears only after the human infant is about 2 or 2.5 years old. And it is significant to note that till its appearance, the human infant is as helpless and dependent on the environment like pre-human species, and that with its appearance, the infant begins to dominate the environment. A human child of 4 or 5 years of age can control and manage animals like horses or other cattle immensely larger or physically than itself. Modern neurology attributes this unique phenomenon to the emergence of a new datum in the child, with new capacities and energies as its fruit. And datum is the self as the ego. And those capacities are imagination, reason, judgment, will, speech, communication, and others. Referring to this, neurologist Gray Walter says in The Living Brain, and the Swami quotes here, "Thus the mechanisms of the brain reveal a deep physiological division between man and ape. If the title of the soul be given to the higher functions in question, it must be admitted that the other animals have only a glimmer of the light that so shines upon men. The nearest creature to us, the chimpanzee, cannot retain an image long enough to reflect on it, however clever it may be in learning tricks or getting food that is placed beyond its natural reach. Unable to rehearse the possible consequences of different responses to a stimulus without any faculty of planning, the apes and other animals cannot learn to control their feelings, the first step towards independence of environment and eventual control of it. The activity of the animal brain is not checked to follow time for the choice of one among several possible responses, but only for the one reflex or conditioned response to emerge. The monkey's brain is enthralled to its senses. Sentio ergo sum. I sense, therefore I exist. Might be the first reflection of a slightly inebriated ape, as it is often the last of alcoholic man. So near and yet so far apart, even then, are they. The brain of a lion, tiger, rhinoceros, and other powerful animals also lack the mechanism of imagination, or we should not be here to discuss the matter. They cannot envisage changes in their environment, so they have never sought to alter it in all their efforts to retain lordship of their habitat. The human alone achieved this power of imaging ideas, and this power was not an isolated phenomenon in him. Within the increased area of the cortex of the ancestral organ, nature evolved from the human capacities for a series of new processes: observation, memory, comparison, evaluation, selection, judgment, and deliberate action. And in achieving these, he achieved two things. And here the Swami continues. Firstly, discovery of the path leading to the processing of raw experience into knowledge, of knowledge into power, power into control and manipulation of the environment constituted by the not-self aspect of experience. Secondly, a faint awareness of the reality of himself as a subject, as a self, behind the fleeting images in his mind, and the discovery of the road leading inward to the total comprehension of this new dimension of reality, resulting in the increasing liberation of moral, aesthetic, and spiritual values in his life, action, and behavior. The human's steady advance on these two fronts constitutes the story of culture and civilization. It constitutes also the march of evolution at the post-human stage, with the emergence on the evolutionary scene of the mind of the human against the background of self-awareness and disciplined in seeking and finding of knowledge of the self and the not-self in varying degrees. Nature yields in increasing measure to one of her own products, the control and the manipulation of the evolutionary process. Rising from knowledge to wisdom. In spite of his rudimentary self-knowledge, which gave him a measure of control of the animal and the natural world, the earliest human largely remained an animal in appetites and behavior. A little more of this self-knowledge, gained through reflection in the context of social experience, helped to increase his control over himself and to humanize him. This process, ever in operation in human cultures and civilizations and socio-political organizations, has led up to the human being of the modern age, with his most total control over the not-self environment through an efficient technology, with his global sweep in socio-cultural interests and contacts, and with his yearning for the universal and human. Yet the disparity between his knowledge of his self and control over his inner nature on the one hand, and his knowledge of and control over the external nature on the other, between, in short, his moral efficiency and his technical efficiency, confronts him with the most serious problem that his evolution has so far seriously posed. This is thwarting his urges and efforts to achieve fulfillment. Neglected and unsolved, this problem may as well make him the only possible destroyer of his civilization, of the fruits of evolution, and of his species as well. In the meantime, he is destined to move from one tension to another, from one sorrow and unfulfillment to another. The only solution lies in deepening and strengthening of his moral and spiritual awareness. Biological evolution achieved a measure of this in the life of the earliest human in his rudimentary knowledge of his own self. Social evolution, guided by human intelligence, advanced this still further, by which a physical and organic self, separated from all other selves, gave place to a social self morally related to an increasing number of other humans. The dynamism of human evolution demands that this education of the human must continue till he rises from ego-centeredness to ego-transcendence, from knowledge to wisdom. Referring to this urgent need to rise from knowledge to wisdom, the late Bertrand Russell says, in The Impact of Science on Society, and the Swami quotes, "We are in the middle of a race between human skill as to means and human folly as to ends. Given sufficient folly as to ends, every increase in the skill required to achieve them is to the bad. The human race has survived hitherto, owing to ignorance and incompetence, but given knowledge and competence combined with folly, there can be no certainty of survival. Knowledge is power, but it is power for evil just as much for good. It follows that unless men increase in wisdom as in knowledge, increase of knowledge will be increase of sorrow." Unquote. Biology speaks of the principle of homeostasis or hemerosis, as clarified by biologist Waddington, by which nature effected an automatic stabilization of internal conditions in the organism of the higher mammals. This helped the slow evolution of the brain until, in the human, she perfected the higher brain. The organism's need for physical survival and organic satisfaction, and her own need for numerical increase, all these have been relegated by nature to the care of the human's lower brain, thus releasing his higher brain. To quote the biologist, in The Living Brain, he says, for functions surpassing the wonders of homeostasis itself, according to modern neurology, or to function the most wonderful instrument for carrying evolution to its specifically human fields, namely the psychosocial or the moral and spiritual, according to Vedanta. Psychosocial evolution as spiritual growth. The capacity and fitness of the higher brain to undertake and fulfill this high function is directly proportional to its freedom from thraldom to his lower brain, from slavery to his sensory apparatus, and its appetites from the pressures and pulls of his lower nature. It is obvious that his higher brain, with its powers of imagination and reason, may stultify itself by functioning as the tail end of the sensory apparatus of the lower brain. It may, on the other hand, redeem itself and also become true to itself by becoming truly higher. It is ethical discipline, what Vedanta calls sama and dhamma, discipline of the mind and discipline of the senses, that helps the higher brain to thus redeem itself and become the agent also of the human redemption. This is human reason and will in its true form, what Vedanta calls buddhi, the supreme instrument that lifts life from knowledge to wisdom, from bondage to freedom. Referring to the significance through homeostasis of this development of the higher brain, Gray Walter explains, from mammals all, homeostasis meant survival, but for man, emancipation. Thus, the spiritual growth of the human is a fact. And the more we know the science and technique of this growth, the better for us and for our society. Growth, both the concept and the word, is of protean significance. We know and recognize two types of human growth, namely physical and mental. The second less palpably than the first. A baby at birth is about 7 pounds in body weight, and every day it increases its weight. It drinks its mother's milk, to be followed by other types of food and drink, and it grows steadily until it becomes a full-grown, healthy man or woman at about 70 or 80 kilos of weight. This is the palpable physical growth of the human, and we ensure it by appropriate physical nourishment accompanied with exercise. Equally important, though less obvious, is his mental growth. Through education, a human child grows in alertness, self-confidence, and a sense of individual worth and dignity. This growth continues till he or she becomes an intellectual giant or a giant of will. This is the mental growth of the human, which we ensure through appropriate mental nourishment, through educational, both institutional and non-institutional. These two types of growth are necessary but not sufficient. There is a third type of growth, most vital and significant, but least recognized, without which the other two will prove the human's undoing. Individually and collectively, without which the human's craving and search for fulfillment will only result in unfulfillment and defeat. This is the human being's spiritual growth, or growth in his or her spiritual dimension, which finds expression in ethical awareness and social feeling to begin with, and finds, according to Vedanta, its consummation in the experience by him or her of the infinite, universal, and divine dimension of his or her individuality, the Atman. Status of the ego in evolution. The ego that made the human being dominate nature is not his true self, but only an initial datum, a promise of greater things to come. It is like the tip of a rock seen above the water level, with the immense rock mass itself lying unseen and waiting to be revealed below the water level. The real self of the human being, says India's Adhyatma Vidya, the science of the human as the Atman, is inaccessible to the sense organs and to the sense-bound mind, but accessible to the buddhi or reason when it becomes subtle and pure. Buddhi grahyam atindriyam, as the Gita expresses it, that the ego is unreal, and the human being's individuality or selfhood does not consist in the ego is the central truth also of Buddhism. This is affirmed by the modern biology as well. In the words of The Science of Life, a voluminous digest of modern biological knowledge by H.G. Wells, G.P. Wells, and Julian Huxley, in its section dealing with the philosophical implications of modern biology in pages 878 through 79, and the Swami quotes here, "Alone is the silence of the night, and on a score of thoughtful occasions we have demanded this can self so vividly central to my universe, so greedily possessive of the world, ever cease to be? Without it, surely there is no world at all, and yet this conscious self dies nightly when we sleep, and we cannot trace the stages by which, in its stages, it crept into an awareness of its own existence. Personality centered in the ego may be only one of nature's methods, a convenient provisional delusion of considerable strategic value." The Swami continues to quote, "The more intelligent and comprehensive man's picture of the universe has become, the more intolerable has become his concentration on the individual life with its inevitable final rejection. He escapes from this ego by this merger, identification with, and participation in a greater being, and acquires an impersonal immortality in the association, his identity dissolving into the greater identity. This is the essence of much religious mysticism. It is remarkable how closely the biological analysis of individuality brings us to the mystics. The Western mystic and the Eastern sage find a strong effect of endorsement in modern science and everyday teaching of practical morality. Both teach that self must be subordinated, that self is a method and not an end." Unquote. The Swami continues again. "The science and technique of spiritual growth from the convenient provisional delusion of the ego to the true self is the special contribution of ethics, aesthetics, and religion. It provides spiritual nourishment to the human being, both when he is at work and when he is at worship, when he is in society and when he is alone. Work done in a spirit of service and dedication, reinforced by an inward penetration through worship and meditation, through bhakti and bhajan, forms the twin technique of spiritual growth. According to Sri Krishna's teaching in the Gita, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. Therefore, at all times meditate upon me and engage yourself in the battle of life. And again in verse 55 of chapter 11, introducing which Shankaracharya says, "Now is proclaimed the practical implications of the essence of the meaning of the entire science of Gita, designed to lead one to spiritual freedom. Perform work in the spirit of dedication," he says, "to me, make me the supreme goal of your life. Be my devotee, free from all sensory attachments. Be free from enmity to all beings. Such a seeker attains me, O Arjuna. Mat karma krit mat paramo, mat bhakta sangavajita, nirvaira sarvabhuteshu yasa mameti pandava." The laboratory of the science of spiritual growth is life itself, with its twin arenas of work outside and meditation within. The temple or church or mosque outside, or the worship room within the house properly used, also provides another laboratory. More important than these two is the laboratory of a trained and a pure mind. Worship and rituals and other religious practices form useful aids if they are not done as items of a static piety, not done as ends in themselves, but as means to spiritual growth, as instruments of a dynamic spirituality, as a depth education of character. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time and presence here today. In the next episode, we will get into the kinship, as Swami Ranganathananda puts it so eloquently, between the spiritual ethos of ancient Vedanta and modern science. In the context of this synthesis, the Swami refers to Srimad Bhagavata and the complementary nature of physical science and the science of religion, and how the words of Sri Krishna himself shed light on this remarkable subject. He then goes on to talk about India's religious urge of realization and not mere speculation. But more on that next time. Thank you for being in the space with me today, friends. This is Preetha Lal, your host. You were listening to readings from Eternal Values for a Changing Society by Swami Ranganathananda. I will speak to you in the next episode again. Until then, please take care. Namaste.